Chapter 4. The Shot Heard Round the World. In September 1774, 56 delegates traveled to Philadelphia. They came from all the colonies except Georgia. The delegates met to discuss the troubles in Massachusetts. They called this meeting the First Continental Congress. A delegate is someone chosen to speak for a group, just like a representative. As they talked, the delegates began to feel more united. Patrick Henry from Virginia declared, "I am not a Virginian, but an American." The Congress wrote a letter to King George III. They told him all the unfair things Britain had done to the colonies. Minutemen prepare for war. The colonies prepared to fight for their freedom. Each colony had men in a militia. The militia met several times a year to train soldiers. These men were called Minutemen. Minutemen used this name because they could be ready to fight at any minute's notice. Some even slept with their weapons. The Minutemen statue is in Concord, Massachusetts. The Ride of Paul Revere. The colonists were afraid that the British would take their weapons away. In Massachusetts, Minutemen hid guns and gunpowder in the village of Concord. The night of April 8, 1775, British soldiers left Boston. They planned to go to Concord and capture the weapons. They didn't know the Patriots were watching their every move. The colonists climbed the tower of the Old North Church. He hung 2 lanterns there. There was to signal the British that they were on their way to cross the Charles River. A silversmith named Paul Revere knew what the signal meant. He had to warn the colonists. Paul rode across the river from Boston. He and another rider, William Dawes, leapt onto horses. They dashed off to Concord by different roads. One story says Paul forgot his spurs. He sent his dog home with a note asking his wife to send them. Then Paul rode through the countryside yelling, "To arms! To arms!" Sleepy patriots stumbled out of their beds. They grabbed their muskets or arms and rushed off to the British. Paul and William Dawes met up again as they raced toward Concord. They were joined by a young doctor named Samuel Prescott. As the 3 riders approached Concord, British soldiers stopped them. They took Paul prisoner, but William Dawes and Dr. Prescott escaped to warn the colonists. Lexington and Concord. The British marched into Lexington. A small group of armed Minutemen waited in the village green. Shots rang out. 8 Minutemen were killed. The British marched on, but by now Minutemen from nearby villages had flooded into Concord. When the British arrived, a group of Minutemen were waiting on Concord's North Bridge. They began firing. The British were badly outnumbered. They knew they could not win. They turned back to Boston. As the British retreated, and retreated means they went back, Minutemen hid behind stone walls, trees, and bushes. They shot at the soldiers. The British were used to fighting in straight lines. They couldn't see who was firing at them. Many British soldiers were killed or wounded before they could go back to Boston. The first shot fired at Lexington and Concord was known as the shot heard round the world. The American Revolution had begun. And revolution means a sudden change in government without an election. Weapons of the American Revolution. Muskets were the most common weapon of colonial times. They were 6 to 7 feet long. They were hard to aim and often misused. Their range was about 100 yards. The picture of a musket is right there. You can see it. A bayonet. Bayonets. Muskets are muskets that often have bayonets fitted to the end. A bayonet is like a sword. A musket with a bayonet on it gave soldiers 2 weapons in one. Rifle. Rifles were about 5 to 6 feet long. A good marksman could hit objects 300 yards away with a rifle. Cannon. Cannons were the most powerful weapons in the war. They could hit a target several hundred yards away. The British had more cannons than the colonists.